This Zoom thing is kind of new. Welcome to the panel, Genre Film is Political and Social Commentary, hosted by Film Fatale in partnership with the Fantasia International Film Festival. My name is Juliette Lammers, and I am one of the coordinators of the Film Fatale Montreal chapter. A brief note about Film Fatale. We are a nonprofit arts organization that advocates for parity in the film industry and supports an inclusive community of over 1,000 women and non-binary feature film and television directors of all backgrounds. Film Fatale raises the visibility of marginalized directors and increases the talent pool for industry organizations, programmers, and production companies looking to work with more underrepresented voices. By expanding the landscape of storytelling, Film Fatale is a part of bringing exciting new films to the screen. If you want to learn more, you can check out filmfatale.org. Today, we are very excited to have a group of distinguished directors join us to discuss the power of genre cinema as a tool for social and political commentary. Film, like literature and art, uses story and metaphor to provide perspective and comment on the times that we live in. And during this time of social reckoning, it's a topic that we feel is particularly relevant. Our panel today will last 90 minutes and we'll reserve the last 20 minutes or so to answer questions. So audience members, there's a Q&A section. I think it's at the bottom of your screen. Feel free to post your questions there throughout the panel and we'll come back to them at the end. Our moderator today is Patricia Gomez Zlatar. Patricia was born in Chile and is now based in Montreal, Canada. She was a scientist before forming Head on the Door Productions, a production company dedicated to the horror and fantasy genres. Her feature film credits include Graveyard Alive, A Zombie Nurse in Love, Go in the Wilderness, and most recently, Slacks, which had its world premiere at Fantasia just a week ago. It's worth noting that Patricia frequently collaborates with Elsa Kephart, who is one of the directors on our panel today. And finally, a great big thank you to all of you directors for taking time out of what I know are very busy schedules to be here today. From all of your different time zones, Maddie Do, a special shout out for calling in at 4 a.m. from Vientiane, Laos. Thank you for getting up so early. And now, without further ado, Patricia, take it away.
Great, thanks so much, Juliette. Guys, I'm so excited. I mean, it's a beautiful evening here in Montreal. Not sure what it's like where you are, but perfect night, perfect evening to talk to 7 incredibly diverse and exciting directors. Before we dive in, I want to give a very brief intro. Mind you, I could probably intro these women for a long time, but I'm trying to keep it condensed here, and then we'll jump into it. So first up is Maddie Do, who's joining us from Laos. Maddie was born and raised in California to refugees of Laos's communist revolution. In 2012, she returned to Laos and directed her first feature film, Shantali. The film was the first Lao feature film to be directed by a woman and feature a female protagonist. The film also became the first Lao film to screen outside of Southeast Asia. Maddie's second feature, Dearest Sister, screened at nearly 24 film festivals, receiving several special jury mentions. The film was later selected as Laos's first official submission to the 90th Academy Awards. Maddie's third feature, The Long Walk, went on to premiere at the Venice International Film Festival and winning a Best Director Award at Sitges and Lucca Film Festivals. And it is important to note that Maddie is Laos's first and only female filmmaker. Welcome, Maddie. Thank you for waking up so early for us.
Everyone. Thanks for having me. I'm really happy to be here. It's a lovely evening, morning here too in Vientiane.
Awesome. Okay, next up is Elsa Kephart. Elsa is from Montreal. She writes and directs horror and fantasy films. Her first feature, Graveyard Alive, A Zombie Nurse in Love, played extensively in film festivals, winning the Kodak Cinematography Award at Slamdance. Her second feature, Go in the Wilderness, premiered at the Festival du Nouveau Cinéma and is available on various platforms, including iTunes. Her third feature, Slacks, had its world premiere at Fantasia last week, It will be released in the US on Shudder in 2021. Elsa is also one of the co-founders of the Montreal chapter of Film Fatale, as well as the co-founder and coordinator of Extinction Rebellion Quebec. Hi, Elsa. Thank you for coming.
Hi, thanks for having me.
All right, next up is Natasha Kermani. Natasha is an Iranian-American writer-director in LA and New York. She is the co-founder of the independent production company Ilium Pictures. Kermani's credits include science fiction feature Imitation Girl and the horror satire Lucky, which recently played at Fantasia this year. Kermani has also directed a variety of commercial and branded content for clients such as NYDJ, Think, and Microsoft. And on her spare time, Natasha is also a violinist and composer who enjoys playing live shows with local bands and ensembles. Thank you so much for joining us, Natasha.
Thank you for having me. I'm super happy to be here.
Awesome. Okay, next up, Jennifer Lynch. Jennifer Lynch wrote and directed the cult classic Boxing Helena. I think we all love that one, when she was only just a teenager. From there, she went on to direct multiple features, including Surveillance, Hiss, Girls, 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 and Chained. Her prolific television credits include being the first female director of American Horror Story, as well as episodes of Jessica Jones, Daredevil, The Walking Dead, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and I could keep going and going. Jen is currently attached to executive produce and direct the pilot Beautiful Strange for A&E Studios and AMC. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be a part of this conversation and this amazing Brady Bunch opening.
Awesome. Next up is Amelia Moses. Amelia Moses is currently based in Montreal. Her films focus on the exploration of female anxieties through a horror lens. Her short film Undress Me screened at over 30 festivals worldwide and had a limited release on Shudder and on the online horror channel Alter, where it garnered over 700,000 views. Her first feature, Bleed With Me, premiered at this year's Fantasia Film Festival, and she is currently in post-production on her second feature, a werewolf thriller called Bloodthirsty. Hello, Amelia,
Hi.
how are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining. Next up, we have Jennifer Reeder. Jennifer Reeder constructs personal fiction films about relationships, trauma, and coping. Her films have shown around the world, including many prestigious film festivals such as Sundance, Berlin, Tribeca, Rotterdam, South by Southwest, Fantasia, Venice. I mean, I could go on and on. Her most recent film, Knives and Skin, was theatrically released in France through UFO and in the US through IFC Midnight. She is currently in pre-production for a new feature film called Perpetrator, which is being produced by 30 West and WTF Films. Hello, Jennifer.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining. And last but certainly not least, Gigi Sal Guerrero. Gigi is a Mexican genre director that lives in Vancouver. She's part of the new wave of Latino talent. She is co-founder of Lucha Gore Productions. She started her career with several short films, including El Gigante, Lucha Gore Christmas, and Evil Dead in 60 Seconds. She went on to make the series La Quinceañera with Warner Brothers Stage 13, and she recently directed her feature debut, Culture Shock, for Bloomhouse Productions. Hello, Gigi.
Okay, ¿qué pasó? Thanks for having me.
Hola. All right, I love it. Okay, so ladies, I mentioned this before we went on air, but great week for me watching your films. So different, but so great. Thank you so much. And I highly recommend that the audience out there try to catch some of these if they haven't already. So I thought maybe we could start this panel just to kind of give an overview, because maybe not everyone in the audience is super familiar with your work. So I'm going to start with a general question and maybe kind of go through all of you so you all have your say. So my first question is, how have you used genre to address political and social issues? Tell us about what issues are important to you and that you've tackled, and if social commentary has always been a part of you as a filmmaker, and if it will continue to be a part in the future. Why don't we start by going backwards? I ended with Gigi. Let's start with Gigi.
Okay, sure. No, that's a great question. You know what? I always have felt that genre is not only the best, but it really is such an amazing type of cinema where you can twist and turn any kind of harsh topic or any kind of truth and really make it your own. I think it's the only type of genre that you can really expand to its fullest, exaggerate to its fullest, but the message will always be there. I think films like Get Out are so good, and really social commentary in horror has been around for a very, very long time. I mean, we can go back to Texas Chainsaw, like way back in the day. We can go back to, Day of the Dead from way back in the day. We've always have had a message to say in horror. And it's pretty amazing that now you can actually more like audiences are being more challenged with genre and are actually paying more attention, which is allowing new filmmakers like some of us to talk about really important stuff. So I took that opportunity with Culture Shock when Blumhouse approached me about it to really talk about something that is unfortunately still a problem, the border crisis with the Mexican border. And I just felt it was a responsibility to make that film. It's very different from all the short films I've done, because I've always done like super grindhouse, gore in your face, holy fucking shit short films. And then Culture Shock was just another side of me. So it felt like a responsibility to take part in it. And as a filmmaker, we tell stories. So if I am going to talk about the border crisis, I want to talk about it right. And not to make my answer too long, but my decision was to be very honest and very black and white about what's happening and about families being separated from their kids and just what it's like to want a better life. No matter your situation, everybody at the end of the day deserves that, no matter what you're coming from. And people deserve a lot better. So yeah, Culture Shock. I had to make it.
I mean, of course, it was so timely. And like you said, it's just horrific to think about what's happening. Now, let me ask you just to continue on this. So now that you've kind of gone into some, dealing with some social commentary, is this something that you want to bring in all your future projects? Is this something that you want to commit yourself to as an important part of you as a filmmaker?
Of course. I think it's important also to recognize your brand and recognize who you are as a voice and who you are as an artist. So for me, although gore is what I'm known for, I don't believe in being gratuitous about it. If I'm going to put something for shock value, I'm going to have a really good reason for it. It all has to do with story. They've been telling us, I went to school for film, and that's still, today I look at that the most important tool and element. Your story has to be the key to want to even tell it. So if I have a reason for it, 100%. And like you say in your question, if it's a political statement, a social commentary, even better, because the audience is going to relate to the problem. And hopefully, the goal moving forward, whether it's genre or whatever I do next, the goal is to always make people think about the film, and make a conversation, for sure.
Amazing. I mean, those are the kind of horror films I love, the genre films that, yes, you enjoy while you're watching, and then when you leave, you keep thinking about it, and at night you're brushing your teeth, you keep thinking about it. The next day you're drinking your coffee, you keep thinking about it. So
it's an escape, Yeah. I think genre is an escape to the horror, the reality and the horrors we live every day.
Yeah.
So it's the best platform, is the best medium is horror, because we can actually enjoy dark shit, but we can talk about it later.
I love it. Okay, so why don't we hear from you, Jennifer Reeder? What's your thought here? Have you always tackled issues throughout your career? So just kind of give the audience a little bit of a rundown of your films and the kind of issues that you like to tackle.
Yeah, for sure. I have, since the very first time I picked up a camera, have thought of my films as a form of social justice, even though I make fictional films that are also meant to be entertaining. I would say that like my message or my mission in most of my films has to do with representations of women, girls, adolescent girls, and moms. Even I like to put the two of them together, both at coming of age moments, and then throw something in there like a dead or missing girl to sort of to give them something else to deal with. I mean, with Knives and Skin, Knives and Skin, which screened at Fantasia last year and is still available on Hulu. I was conceiving of that well before, the sort of Me Too movement. But I think at the core, Knives and Skin has a lot to do with issues around consent, and the idea that every time that an adolescent girl leaves her house, no matter where she is anywhere on the planet, she is prey. And, what was interesting touring around with Knives and Skin was that I kept getting asked about, what is this sort of trend with women in horror, and I was like, it's not a trend, actually. A teenage girl invented Frankenstein. I think that women have sort of owned horror in their bodies forever. And it's in a way, in the past something like 12 to 15 years, it's I think there's been so many female directors who are just reclaiming this territory. And for me, it's like genre, it's like a curtain that you can use and to kind of get people interested in the content, and then the curtain opens and it's the the story, it leads them into a different direction. So I would just echo what Gigi just said. It's like the horror in particular, or the kind of horror thriller is for me, it's always been territory to mine for social content or social commentary. And I think right now that there are so many kind of women reclaiming genre for their own, because we've of course been like the subject of so many of these stories, both being kind of like bludgeoned and stalked, then we get to create our own narrative. So even Perpetrator, the film that I'm in pre-production with right now, whenever of course we get to make films again in any kind of robust way, is also really about the power of the female body. It's a shapeshifter story that really starts with this idea that that women are miraculous, and that's not a bold statement. I stand by it.
I love it. And Knives and Skins, I saw, it was absolutely hypnotic, I have to say. And I have a 10-year-old daughter. It really made me think about a lot of things too, which is extremely frightening for me. It's one thing for myself to be a woman, but to unleash my daughter to the world a little bit, it really made me think. And I have to say, it was great. I found that Knives and Skin was just, like I said, hypnotic. I couldn't pull away. I just had to keep watching. So thanks for that. Amelia, your turn. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your films and some of the issues that you find very important, and if you plan to always include these issues in all your filmmaking, if this is really something that you see as an important part of your process.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that I don't think my films really deal with any sort of kind of like social commentary. I think it's more like internal, and thinking about internal insecurities and anxieties and things we fear, kind of rooted in a female gaze, because I am a female director, but I think are also universal. So yeah, I wouldn't really say like I'm that interested in the external or something on a bigger scale, but much more like character driven and much more kind of internalized. So with my short film Undress Me, that was kind of looking at social anxiety and kind of like the expectations that this young woman kind of felt on herself in order to kind of fit in, which I guess does have to kind of do with like maybe what society is kind of telling women they have to do, but it was very much again rooted in like this particular character's anxieties and insecurities as a person. And then my feature Bleed With Me, I guess also deals with more kind of internal stuff, and kind of a different view on like a kind of twisted female friendship, and the kind of codependency that can kind of come out of those friendships. And obviously kind of like what Gigi was saying, like you can take an idea that's very like grounded and real that we all kind of like understand or relate to or know exists in the world, but then you're kind of turning everything up to 11 and you're like, okay, now we're in a heightened horror world. And it's a really exciting opportunity to be able to take something real and grounded and put it in that setting in order to kind of delve into those nuances and stuff. And then also kind of, you know, make a scary or unsettling or, you know, a gory movie, whatever it is. So I think that it's a really good package to like deliver social commentary or, you know, whatever themes you want to explore. But there's just so many opportunities within the horror genre to kind of look at such a wide variety of things.
Okay, excellent. And next up, Jennifer Lynch. So why don't you talk to us a little bit about your, I mean, pretty incredible career, and talk to us if it's been important for you to have these kind of commentaries in your filmmaking.
Hello, and thank you again. I think what's most interesting about this is that having not made a feature in so long, I still feel that there's no way for me not to be making a social commentary in some way, just based on the fact that in the same way that you listen to your thoughts on the day, no matter what you've planned, you listen to your footage afterwards too, and you sometimes get other things. And I have always been fascinated with the human monster. And I think that when I was a kid, I heard people afraid of monsters under their bed. I thought if it's hiding, it's probably afraid. So I would hang my hand underneath the dark space there in case it wanted to hold someone's hand. So for me, it's like there are two sides to this, and I never want to justify any horrible killing, but I absolutely want to explain how that became that person's choice. And plus there's the fun genre bit of it with, you know, who's the bad boy you like? Is it the guy on the motorcycle who keeps you out past curfew? Or is it the guy who gives you jewelry that belonged to a girl that's buried 3 feet, you know, beyond the tree out in the park? So but I think that I would love to have the opportunity soon to make a feature that I think is flavored with the amount of horror I see in what's going on today. I can't even tell you if the films would be different that I have made, or even the television that I have made, were I to have known this was coming. But I think that the fact that aliens aren't what we're talking about right now is really, really amazing.
Thanks for that, Jen. Next up is Natasha. Hey, Natasha. So why don't you let us know if tackling issues is part of your filmmaking, and let us know if it's always been a part of your filmmaking?
Absolutely. I mean, for me, absolutely. It's always been expressing theme has always been something that has drawn me to filmmaking as a career and something to sort of devote my life to. I grew up watching Star Trek and The Twilight Zone, and I think early on was infused with this passion for sort of the idea of tackling big ideas and big themes through an intimate story in an intimate way was very appealing to me. It seems very challenging and very meaningful work. So yeah, I would say absolutely every step of the way. And a project, when I come to a project, I need to see it as having potential to be a window to a conversation, or a window to at least the beginning of a conversation, that it can kind of have a life beyond its 2 hours of existing. And, you know, I actually think we're at a really exciting time now because, you know, getting into it, I was still looking at genre and all of these things through a very specific lens, which was not my own lens. And now, you know, the last few years coming in, starting to make my own work and getting to know such amazing fellow women directors, you know, I think this is exciting, and it makes me even more motivated to be committed to the idea of tackling these conversations, because I think it's actually our responsibility in many ways. So, you know, a lot of these sort of like women in genre panels are, you know, asking like, oh, new voices to the genre. And I sort of balk at the idea that women are new to genre. I think that we're very much a part of the legacy of this. And, you know, the mother of modern horror is Mary Shelley, right? And before Mary Shelley, you have ancient civilizations, which were run by holy women and priestesses and shamans who were using these fantastical stories, right, to help their community process and decide what sort of society they wanted to be and what our function will be within our community. So I guess even though a lot of this history has been omitted, I think it's actually up to us and the people on this panel and the people who want to work in this field to reclaim our seat at the table, you know, and I think that's exciting.
It is exciting. Now, can you talk a little bit about your film, Lucky? What were you trying to say with this film? I feel like it's a very powerful piece.
Yeah. Again, I was very intrigued. So Lucky the script was written by Bria Grant, who also plays the lead. And I was very drawn to it because, first of all, it was not something I would ever write. So that was very exciting for me. And I think, you know, it is about experience of women. It's a movie about what it's like to be in our skin. And I sort of think of it as, you know, as an episode of The Twilight Zone, right? Where we're going on this journey with her into this twisted version of her reality. So it's one baby step removed from our reality, but it's still very much grounded in the experience that we all share. So I thought that was really interesting challenge. And I actually really love Bria's humor. And I think that's something that we should also be talking about, is sort of how we're bringing humor and perspective and, you know, that voice to this genre. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it's great. Elsa, your turn. Tell us about Slacks, and tell us about your other films as well, and what kind of things have been important for you in terms of social commentary or political commentary.
Sure. So Slacks is definitely a film that has a very strong social message. It's like super in your face. What I love is I don't really read reviews, but I sort of glean little bits, and I see sometimes, wow, I just came in to see a film about killer pants. I didn't realize it was going to be a total attack on the fast fashion industry. And that's where I'm like, yes, because I see genre really as, I think Jennifer said, as a curtain. So you draw people in saying, come, I'm going to show you a crazy little film about killer pants, not knowing that actually it's a scathing commentary, not just on the fast fashion industry, but on consumerism and capitalism. So Slacks, I would say, is the most blatant example of how I use social commentary in my films. The previous two features, I think it was more subtle. It was definitely a little bit like Amelia said, where it was my interpretation of being a woman in Graveyard Alive, and I realized, whoa, I'm a monster. But I think that's why I love horror, like Jennifer said, that it permits us to explore the monstrous side of ourselves and other people. So I definitely think in a way that's a social exploration, because it's a way for us to delve into the dark nature that is not often allowed, especially not for women. And then my second feature, Go in the Wilderness, was a reinterpretation of the myth of Adam and Eve, but seen from the point of view of Lilith, who a lot of people say is a demon. But what I'm saying is that no, she's actually the first woman who questioned the Christian God's order of things. And so it's my way of saying, well, some people interpret the Bible like this, and I interpret the Bible and mythical stories like this. And in a way, Lilith is the first one to like sort of poke at the pre-established order, which I think is another way for genre to work, is that we can make a comment by using a bias. And so a lot of people don't expect a comment in a horror film. So I definitely want to keep making horror films or genre films that have a social commentary. Some will be more overt than others, depending on the film that I'm telling. And I don't always want to force a commentary if it would feel too on the nose or not organic. But I think because I'm a woman and because I think a lot about the big issues, you know, like Natasha was saying, I read books on anything you can imagine, and then it sort of percolates into myself. Like I'm working on, well, as you know, Patricia, several films, but one of them being a woman who, unbeknownst to her, because she has eco-anxiety, and her husband gets attacked by studying the effects of climate change in a tropical forest, she learns to become a shaman. So that might not be a sort of a social commentary, but in a way it's how to reclaim a different way of seeing that our logical extractivist society has pushed aside. So is that social commentary? I think so. It's not as obvious as like
you said, sometimes it's subtle, sometimes it's overt, but it can all be very effective.
But I think if we're all thinking people and we're all critical of society in a way, then there'll be a sort of social commentary, whether it's obvious or not, whether it's overt or not.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. And Maddie, let's hear from you.
Well, I legit live in a single party communist country, so like social commentary is pretty important, and I'm probably one of the few filmmakers in this room that actually has to go through censorship and actually has to get approved by a communist government to make film. And the laws are not as harsh as other countries. I mean, like, it's definitely not North Korea or China, but like there are definitely certain topics that you cannot breach, and there are certain subjects that you should approach with trepidation, which I approach anyway. But because I make horror films, because I make genre films, like I have the vehicle to tell those stories without getting into too much trouble. You know, I like being alive. Just kidding, you guys. I'm totally sort of just kidding. And to be honest, like whether I'll keep using social commentary in my work, regardless of what country the film is from, because I mean, I speak a few languages. I intend on making films in other countries as well. I don't intend on only making Lao film. This is my home, so I will always have the opportunity to make film here in Lao. But yeah, I am of the mindset that if I'm gonna make a film, it may as well like have a need to exist, right? Like I don't really want to make a film if there's no reason for it to exist, if it doesn't have a uniqueness about it, right? Because like, why would I make another film that's been done before? And one of the great things about horror is like, if I want to make a film that's political or has social commentary or some kind of scathing underlying message, I can, because it's not a documentary, it's not a drama or a period piece. I don't have to be like 100, 1000% accurate. I can do whatever the fuck I want to do.
So tell us then, you've done 3 features. What were you trying to say with each? Was it all kind of the same thing, or was it different things?
Oh, definitely not. Gently was a feature that I didn't even really know would get seen by the rest of the world. That was kind of an accident. That was supposed to be that was my first film I ever made. I didn't know anything about film before then. I had no intention of being a filmmaker before then. So we had used Gently as an exercise to see if I could figure out this whole film thing. If it sucked, we were just gonna like throw the hard drives away and decide whether I wanted to keep going or not. Thank God it worked. That one was just about a woman's place in her family here in Lao. Lao families, a lot of Asian families and other ethnic non-Occidental families are very strict in terms of hierarchy and how a woman behaves in the family, how she's perceived, what rights she has, and what say she has in the family unit, even though obviously women are a huge contributing part to any family. And then Dear Sister had expanded in a lot of ways. My knowledge in like not guessing at how to make a film had expanded. So my message was able to expand and my budget's also expanded. So that's about a woman's place in her society. And it's a really, I mean, if you look at it, it's more about the terror of humans rather than ghosts. Like Jennifer had said, humans are a lot fucking scarier than some imperceivable, invisible ghost, right? And greed and avarice and class structure is terrifying, I think. And here in Laos, just like in a lot of places like in South Asia and the Middle East, class structure is still all important. Well, fuck, I look at the West, I look at America with all these like people suffering influenza or affluenza, not influenza, affluenza, fucking
Yeah.
toxic rich assholes. Like it's a common thread in any society, regardless. It does, you don't
Sadly,
have to
I
be
think
that.
so. Yes.
And the third film, The Long Walk, was just about how development sweeps through societies, and people get forgotten, people get lost in their society, and they can become outliers. And it's about a lot of things, actually. It's about regret, it's about grief and loneliness, and the decisions that people make when they try to seize control of their lives after having been so out of control, after having had so much shit happen to them out of their power, and how, well, it doesn't always go well.
Okay, awesome. So I think what we're going to try next, and if it descends into chaos, we will change direction. But I'm going to ask a general question, and then you guys can answer as you feel fit. And I heard from a lot of you how important genre was, how you felt it was such a great way to approach issues and to tackle things that might be a little bit more difficult to tackle with other types of films. And I'm wondering, was there one genre film that really influenced you, or that at least showed you, hey, I can do something with this, with genre, I can actually make it about something? Was there one film that you can think about that really kind of changed your way of thinking of genre? Or did you just kind of naturally come to this idea of using genre for social commentary? So I open the floor and let you girls decide who wants to answer. Hopefully all. Jennifer Lynch.
I just quickly, you just reminded me that I think I related Exorcist, which I saw at way too young an age, because it empowered the daughter of a single mother. And it was a strangely empowering film, and it meant that I wasn't just small. There might be more under there, and I think that fascinated me. It just occurred to me now, but I also am fascinated by people who still think this is new for women, as you were saying, Natasha, and this idea of, has no one gone to high school? Has no one, been in a bad relationship? Has no one, we play the long game? We can be super duper frightening. Men will punch each other in the face and in the nuts, but we will wait it out, So I think that horror is, it's defined in so many different ways, but I think that the ones that got me were the ones that made what I thought was my defect, my superpower.
How interesting. I have to say, I never would have thought I would have heard The Exorcist as part of this answer. But I'm not surprised, Jennifer Lynch. Anybody else want to? Yes, Natasha.
Yeah, I mean, I think if I can go back to Frankenstein, back to Mary Shelley, I know it's a book, but I think that was especially interesting also because I've always been really interested in looking at ourselves through a different lens. Jennifer said monster, you can also call it, the postmodern Prometheus or a robot or whatever it was. And I think that processing that and then processing the context in which that art was made was especially relevant because we had seen a lot of stuff that used genre as a metaphor. But I think, again, to see such an influential work from a woman, obviously this is a very important piece of work to me, but I think that the context in which the art is made is also important. So yeah, I just want to bring that up.
Okay. Anybody else wanna mention anything?
I'll go.
Oh, Gigi, yes, all you.
No, yeah, I mean, I think also for myself, not just from films, but it's been from life experience. Like I come from Mexico City, and we're talking like very spiritual country. Like our culture and traditions are out of this world. Like, we don't look at death as a scary thing. And many other countries, just like us, we actually cherish it. We celebrate it. And coming from such a spiritual country, and I grew up in and I'm talking like legit, like very Catholic Mexican house. So I'm talking about like everything is the devil. I'm talking about like my family, especially my mom and grandma's side, everything is the devil. Everything is a superstition. You drop your purse on the ground. Oh shit, the devil's taking your money. Like that's the kind of stuff I grew up with. So I grew up, and also coming from Mexico, as much as I love where I'm from, we do live in danger. You know, sometimes we do go through a lot of stuff. You know, we don't wake up feeling safe all the time. So it's also, I'm coming from always growing up, I was coming from almost like a side of curiosity. How come my mom doesn't let me watch horror movies? How come I have to pray at night? How come I gotta, you know, bless myself every single day, no matter where I go? How come I always have to walk in that room with my right foot? Stuff like that. So growing up, not being allowed to be anywhere near anything scary, I come from total curiosity. And, you know, you walk outside of a McDonald's and the newspaper stand is there, you will see someone missing their head on the front page. And so I was always like, how come I can't see that if it's right in front of me growing up? And of course, believing in ghosts and all kinds of demonic things was a thing for me. But instead of listening, I was like, I want to see what this is. So, so for me was also The Exorcist. I saw it when it got remade. I think it was like 2000 when it came back out in theaters. And I had recently just seen I think I was 9 or something like that. And I'd recently seen my first horror movie because I stole it. No, rewind. Mexicans, we don't steal, we borrow for a long time. So I borrowed at Blockbuster, Chucky 2, Child's Play 2, because I would always walk down the horror aisle and just imagine, what's all this stuff my mom's keeping from me? So I borrowed the VHS of Child's Play 2. And kind of like what Jen said, it was just that impact of what being scared is and like what is more out there. I think I only saw 20 minutes of it, but I had, and still today I use it as an inspiration, but I had never had that feeling of fear that a movie can follow you home, or a movie can follow you where you go. You know, people watch Jaws, they don't even want to take a shower. You know what I mean? People watch a certain kind of movie, they don't want anything to do with it. So I still remember to this day watching Chucky, and I knew that son of a bitch was in my closet. I knew he was there. Why am I feeling that? And I felt the same after The Exorcist. Linda Blair is under my bed. Why? You know, why am I feeling all this? And I think it's just immersing yourself in a horror movie. That's really cool. I don't know. I want to share that. But I think it also comes with life experience, what kind of background you come from. And yeah, so definitely for me was a little mix of rebellion against my family with that.
And was there a movie in particular, Gigi, that you saw where you realized that the director was trying to talk about something larger? Like, what was that first film for you where you were like, oh my goodness, he's actually talking about this?
Yeah, no,
not like a bloody hand or something, you know, like what was that film for you?
For me, look, I grew up thinking I was going to be like the next comedian. I don't know why. I just was convinced I'm going to be a musical theater person. And then when I was 16, I crashed my sister's date because I'm a bad little sister. I crashed her date at the theater. She was dating a film student at the time, and they were watching Children of Men. I didn't know what they were going to watch. I just went and totally showed up with my friends to be a jerk. And that movie, oh my God, I got too excited. That movie, it changed me. It's not a horror, but what it talks about is scary as shit. I had never seen anything like that. Like, I just felt like shit at the end of Children of Men. And I was watching horror movies. I was watching comedies, like Little Nicky was one of my favorites. That's how immature I was. Like, I was all about Waterboy, you know, that was me. Happy Gilmore, you talk about it. And,
Gigi, you sound
and
just like my brother. I'm just saying.
perfect.
Thank God he didn't show up during one of my dates.
Yeah. And so I watched Children of Men, and at the end of that movie, I was like, I hate humanity so much. And long story short, because I want to hear everybody, I talk too much. But at the end of that movie, I was in such shock at 16, and that boyfriend at the time, he was like, "Oh, well, that's what we're learning in school." And I'm like, "You learn to make movies in school?" He's like, "Yeah, it's called film school." And I'm like, I was like, there's such a thing. He's like, yeah, yeah. And this guy, he's a Mexican director, Alfonso Cuarón. And I was like, oh, how cool. And he's like, I was like, so I can learn to tell stories like that? He's like, oh yeah, it's what I'm learning to do. And I went home, dropped my bags, and I was like, Mama, Papa, I'm going to film school. Like, it was that moment. I just knew. So
Yeah.
anyway.
And your parents must have been very upset for a long time, I'm sure, probably wondering what went wrong.
Oh yeah, they're still wondering what the hell am I making now, but it's fine. They're still my number one fans.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Who else wants to take a stab? Elsa, yes.
Yeah, well, this might sound weird. I was thinking, what film really influenced me that made a social commentary? What horror film? And I would have to say it would be Ravenous. I don't know if anyone has seen this little-known cannibal movie,
Yeah.
because I saw it when I was doing research for Graveyard Alive, so I was like 22 or 23. And it talks about the expansion of what we call North America, especially in the US, and how a bunch of cannibals. I won't reveal the story. It's really an awesome film, but it does liken cannibalism to the expansion, the territorial expansion of North America. And it was, and I'm just realizing now as I say it, that it was so perturbing because it married social commentary and cannibalism, because it actually made me feel, oh my God, this is what, as settlers, we've done to this land that wasn't ours, and what we've done to the people on it. And so it's one of the only films where I had to stop halfway through because I was so disturbed. And it really made me realize that genre film, and it's Ravenous, I don't know if it worked quite well at the box office because it was very between two things. It wasn't quite horrific, it was sort of funny, and I think that's what my films are like. So I would have to say that film.
Okay, interesting. I mean, I love Ravenous myself, so I totally get that. Who's left? Oh, Maddie, yes.
I'm like the opposite of Gigi's family. My parents, we had this thing like Friday night was go to the video store night, and Dad would pick out a movie and we kids could pick out a movie. And like I tell a lot of people this, our favorite thing to do was browse the horror aisle because, they had those cardboard boxes stuffed with a foam. Yeah, so that they felt like tactile. And they always had the best art, like the best art. And I got to see all kinds of shit inappropriately when I was little, but I don't know how much of it I actually saw. I remember very little of it because it was probably like this, so, but to be honest, the film that most influenced me was also like Gigi, not a horror film. It was I don't even know what you would call it. It's The Killing Fields. It was about Pol Pot in Cambodia. And the Khmer Rouge. And I watched that as a child. Like, I'm talking about elementary school. My parents sat me down, and my brother and I down, and they made us watch it. They would take breaks and pause it and turn to us and explain what was happening to us. But, they're Asian, so it wasn't like they were like, it's fake, don't worry. No, they're just like, this is what we had to fucking go through. Right. Cambodia was much worse. But we are here as refugees because we escaped a real fucking horror. And so I remember the first few times I watched it because it was like an annual thing. Like, oh, it's time to sit the fucking kids down and watch some Killing Fields again. And just like sometimes shaking because just like having nightmares about how horrific that was. And knowing that that was the background of many people. And my parents were refugees who had to live in a fucking refugee camp before we got to the States or wherever we all end up in. And it made me think a lot as an adult, no matter what I tried to do. I don't even just mean film, because film just, I kind of just fell into film in my adult years, right? That we have to take ownership of our stories. It's like, also as a Southeast Asian, people don't know about Lao. People don't know any stories about our culture. They don't know about our ghosts, our shamans, our priestesses, our weird voodoo-like shit, our weird Day of the Dead shit like in Mexico. They don't know anything about Lao. And, you know, I don't need another fucking white man to tell my story. I'm Lao. I can do it myself. And so that's just kind of what I'm doing now.
Right. Yeah. Amazing. Who's left? I think Amelia, can we hear from you? Was there a film that was
Yeah, I can go.
particularly influential?
I was trying to think, and there wasn't really anything specific that came to mind. But I grew up watching lots of horror movies, specifically kind of like Hammer horror movies, so British horror films from like, the 60s and 70s that all kind of take from those classic stories like Dracula, or like Natasha was talking about Frankenstein, and inevitably those are so weighted in commentary and like metaphor and stuff. And obviously vampires can work for so many different things, so it's a kind of continuous myth. And I guess maybe some films that have been like a big influence on me would be like Videodrome or The Fly, because I feel like those are both really like, they fit that mold really well, where you're like, okay, I'm in like a fucked up universe, but there's also something else going on, and you can kind of interpret it multiple ways. But they're definitely checking both those boxes of like something interesting and entertaining and different, but that's also examining something within society or within ourselves. So I'd say probably, yeah, like those two movies have meant a lot to me.
Okay. And I think Jennifer Reeder, we still haven't heard from you about what might have been really influential for you.
Sure, I'll try and keep it brief. I mean, I remember like my mom, was a kind of a cinephile, and I remember at a really, really, really young age watching Hitchcock's Rebecca, which of course is based on a book by another Rebecca de Mornay, who went on to also, she's just like Patricia Highsmith is, or Octavia Butler is, and we brought up, Mary Shelley is someone who, a female writer who really dominated, certain aspects of genre. And I remember just watching Rebecca and being really obsessed. I mean, I feel like it's still a story and a film that I'm obsessed with. This idea of in a way, a kind of a lesbian love triangle that's anchored by a female ghost who is Rebecca. I mean, maybe I'm spoiling it for anyone who's watching who hasn't seen Rebecca, but I would also still recommend it. And that felt really, in a way, as a young girl, empowering. I mean, there's so much tension in that story, but it's all anchored around a dead woman, that you never see. And then from there, right, sort of like I grew up in the midst of just every single other scary movie being anchored by a dead girl, or like a stalked girl who was about to die, but somehow it all went back to Rebecca, who kind of at the end of the day had all the power in that film. And that felt very, much like a place that I wanted to anchor my own self as a storyteller. And then I remember, and this is another film that's based on a book, but the original Carrie, just felt like it was about, how as even a teenage girl, you take this thing that people will ridicule you for. I think that Jen Lynch was saying this, and then you flip it and it becomes your superpower. There's something that's really, that's the story that I like to tell, that in terms of my own filmmaking or my own storytelling, is to say like, oh, you think I'm crazy? I'll show you crazy, or like, you think I'm a misfit? I'll show you a misfit. And it felt like, Carrie as this really intense outcast who was, and that's also, both the book and the film are also about, you know, social hierarchy and bullying and the reaction to all of that. I mean, there is social commentary in that, but maybe not to the extent of some other, you know, films that have been brought up. But I always feel like, in a way, if you want to know, like, my own provenance as a filmmaker, I feel like the kind of impossible love child of Rebecca and Carrie.
Fascinating. I love it. That's great. So my next question, and again, I'll just open it up and you ladies can respond, is how has the audiences, or how have audiences reacted to your social commentary? Have you been pleased with the results, or do you feel that sometimes audiences don't quite get what you're trying to go for? How does that make you feel?
Girl, my movie woke up from the dead all the Trump supporters, let me tell you. Holy crap. Oh my God. Oh my God. Like I knew they were around. I just didn't know. They were like, you know, like right there and so passionate. Holy crap. Anyways, that's, yeah. I remember at one point, I can't remember who told me, because I do enjoy being a troll sometimes. So I actually enjoy tweeting back. Like, I didn't mind. I'm like, fuck it. Let's just say it. I'm just going to say stuff back. I can't remember if it was my manager or my family. Someone was like, Gigi, por favor, like, you got to stop. Just don't involve yourself. It's a very intense topic. Like, just don't talk back. I'm like, okay, you're right. And I would just like go right back into trolling back. But like, you know, sometimes I think in a way with culture shock, I was really worried at first, but then I got really stoked how much hype it got and how many people were watching it and how it was really getting to people, although maybe they were on that side of stuff, how they were understanding it. And that was, to me, enough to make a point of what's going on in the border crisis. And especially, you know, there was a lot of back and forth with the studio, especially for those who may have seen it. I won't ruin it, but the ending, I decided to make the credit sequence really, really satirical in a way to just give people a laugh. I think what we watch on the news is so heartbreaking, horrific, and sad. I didn't want to leave on that sad note, which is the end of the film. It's very truthful. So it was like a really nice decision. Well, in the credits, let's make everybody laugh. You know, let's just lighthearted a little bit. And we made like a fake news thing, which was super funny. And, you know, we make fun of the president's 25th tweet of the day. Like, we just went for it. And it was a lot of back and forth. Should I keep it? Should I not? And I was like begging, no, let me keep it. Like, I beg you, let me keep this fake news. And definitely that ending pissed off a lot of people. But then you see a lot of the Latinos that watch it. We were all like, ha, 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 like loving it. So sometimes you just got to go for it, I think, you know, like to get that reaction. It's like gore, you know, you want the shock value, then you got to really go for it. But I think for the stuff we're making, it can be, you know, explicit or implicit, I guess. But challenging your audience to understand it, that's the goal, to want to talk about it at the end of the day, right? If your message is there, let people know about it. I think that's what storytelling is for. So
yeah, no, for sure. I feel like culture shock was not subtle, but that was one of its strengths too. It was just not. You know, it was great because it wasn't subtle, and you were like, hi, we're going to talk about this.
Yeah.
And there's no confusion because we're going to talk about this.
Yeah,
a little bit,
for sure.
Kind of like Slacks, right, Elsa? Same thing. I mean, there's no confusion. You know right away what you're going to talk about. And how has the audience response to Slacks been for you that you're aware of anyway? Are you happy with it?
Yeah, I'm super happy. I'm especially happy that one journalist called it a ferocious attack on fast fashion. I was like, yes, ferocious. It's been, most people really get it. I think I've seen one review where they're like, oh, it would have been good if the evil company head well, I guess it's a spoiler, doesn't die, but it's not a spoiler because he doesn't die. And I was like, no, that's the point, because those people always get away. It's not the people at the top that die, it's the people at the bottom. But for the most part, I've been really thrilled. I think it actually, I'm surprised how, I had a bunch of interviews last week. I'm surprised how on point everyone was and how it really galvanizes people, and they don't just talk about fast fashion, they talk about capitalism and mass consumerism, and I'm really pleased, because I think that's something we really super importantly need to talk about, and especially relating to climate change. So I'm really thrilled, and I'm thrilled that people aren't just like, oh, it's not just a film about killer pants. That's what I came to see. Oh, someone I think wrote, not enough gore, but at least the message is really great or something. I was like, oh, I guess.
I'll take it.
And if I actually think, I just want to jump in real quick, because I think a lot of times, a lot of these conversations and the development process have to do with what reception will be. And I think often it's a disservice to our viewers and to the audience, because they end up getting gypped, right? And we end up taking a safer route sometimes. And I think in the end, they can actually handle it, right? Especially genre fans. They can handle it. They want the conversation. We're looking for something new and different. And just one real quick thing, my first film is in 2 languages, and the second language is Farsi language. And I was not sure if anybody was going to watch it. And it was actually the horror community that was very open to it and really embraced it. And I thought that was a really interesting learning experience for me, because it's this very soft, 2 Iranian characters speaking Farsi to an alien, and you're like, who the fuck is going to watch this? And people will watch it, and they will engage, and they'll be interested. And, I just think we sometimes underestimate what people have an appetite for.
Yeah, I agree. I watched Lucky with my significant other, and he turned around at the end. He was like, what does this mean? I mean, to me, it was very obvious, but I'm like, just think about it. He was like, oh, I mean, it's great, So, I mean,
that was the most interesting. Let me tell you what, the gender divide on those screenings is crystal clear.
Crystal clear. And it was like a whole discussion came up after your film, which was great too, because yes, it's not because he's a jerk that he doesn't understand. It's just not part of the reality for him. So really, really great. And you're right. I feel like the 2 genders can sometimes view something quite differently, and which makes sense, of course. Anybody else want to jump in? Jennifer Lynch.
Here we go. Sorry. My neighbor is sawing on his roof, if you end up hearing sawing. It's not some weird trick I'm pulling. What I wanted to stop and say to Gigi and to Elsa and everybody here, holy fucking yes, that you wanted something in your film and it stayed. As someone who's 52 and been doing this since she was 19, winning that battle, it shouldn't be anything you win. It should be, what would you like to have your film look like?
Yes. Okay.
Having said that, I am just so thrilled that there is transformation and evolution in this. I could not be more fucking excited. And as far as my feelings about the audience's response work it is always interesting. I'm always thrilled because it breeds conversation, not division. And I think that without art, we are doomed to really, really do some bad shit to each other, some low vibe shit. Yeah. And I know low vibe.
And you're putting it nicely, Jennifer.
Yes, I am. I'm putting it very nicely so that I don't begin sobbing.
Well, I have tissues. Look, right here. Tissues for you.
Oh, good. I thought it was just my. But yes, no, I am deeply appreciative of anybody who's willing to donate their time, which is a privilege, to watching something I have made, and I am honored to be in the company of everybody here. Again, it just feels like hope is alive.
Oh, yep. I agree. Let's hear from the other Jennifer. How have you felt about the audience response to your work?
Well, I think probably one of the very best audience responses that I got was from Ashley, who runs the Graveyard Shift Sisters Twitter account, who is a young African-American woman, super horror fan. And I got to meet her almost a year ago at Fantastic Fest in Austin. But even prior to that, she was engaging me on Twitter about how much she loved seeing a genre film that had a lead, you know, a young woman of color as its lead. I mean, Knives and Skin is like really genre adjacent. You know, it's kind of a horror, it's kind of a teen film, it's kind of a musical. You know, I mean, there's a lot.
It's a trip at the same time. It's like trippy as well.
I mean, but it's sort of like, it's a film that knows that it's quoting other films to kind of tell its story, but it's got a very, it's got a really diverse cast. And I think the best response that I have gotten are from, you know, especially like young women of color who are horror fans, who are so hungry to see, you know, to see themselves represented in genre, and they're not the victims. They're really the heroes of the story. Yeah. So that was, you know, I mean, there's plenty of haters out there, but I try and, you know, not concentrate on the haters. It's too much. You'll sort of spiral down with all the people who just are like, that's the worst film I've ever seen in my life.
I didn't get it or something.
Yeah. And I think, you know, I mean, what I have done is really, I mean, I feel like since the time that I first picked up a camera, I feel like I'm really interested in telling stories that have a certain frequency, literally. And if you can kind of get into the frequency of that film, then you're going to love it. And if you can't get into the frequency, it's like swimming in the ocean for the first time or doing double jump rope for the first time. You're either going to get like slammed by a wave, or you're going to get like tied up in the ropes. And so, and that's fine. You know, I'm happy to make to make films for people who can get into the frequency, but truly, you know, making Knives and Skin and being very conscientious of how I cast that film in front of the camera. And I can tell you that it was like, there were so many incredible, you know, queer women of color, you know, I could go on and on behind the camera. I mean, it was a really intensely beautiful a group of people in front of and behind the camera, which was not hard to do, by the way. And we made this film in Chicago, you know, which is not known for its like film and television industry so much, you know. So I just think that I would also, just on a side note, anyone who's getting ready to make a film, you know, like be mindful of your casting in front of and behind the camera. But yeah, I mean, it was like so rad, the response from so many, you know, super horror fans who are, you know, women of color who have just not seen themselves represented on the screen that way. And so it, you know, I will continue, and I've done it before, but I will continue to, you know, to cast mindfully.
That's amazing. That's great. Amelia, how about you? I mean, your film was a lot more subtle, but definitely was talking about a lot of stuff. So how has the response been from the audience? Are you happy with it? Do you feel that what you wanted to say was received well?
Yeah, like I've actually been pretty taken aback at how like clear the themes are coming across and stuff, and kind of what's being explored, because it's definitely an ambiguous film. It's definitely a nuanced film. So it's not the most accessible in a lot of ways, or it's not very like overt, I guess, in those things. So that's been really cool. I'm like obviously very new to this. This is my first time going through this process with a feature and just kind of like hearing what people think. And so I'm still kind of processing everything, because it's, you know, we only had the premiere like, I don't know, 4 days ago or something.
Yeah.
But I guess I was actually surprised at how much people were getting from it. And that meant a lot to me as a first film and everything. And then I guess kind of, I can't remember who was touching on this, but like sometimes the gender divide in audience reactions too. And like my film deals with a very specifically female friendship. And again, that's not to say that can't happen for men, but it was just like what I was observing in myself or people around me, because I think there's a certain kind of intensity and intimacy that can come out of female friendships, both positive and negative. I was looking at the kind of darker side of things, but obviously there's very like beautiful aspects of female friendships as well. And I was actually surprised at kind of how men were getting that too, like actually across the board, people seem to understand it. Though the women I have talked to seem to kind of get it on that deeper level where, it's just kind of like hitting a bit closer to home. There was an interesting, I can't remember what the article was, a review of the film, and they were talking about a study they read about how women experience, like if you fall out with a friend, that experience for them can be equivalent to like divorce or something like really, emotionally intense. And I thought that was like a really interesting comparison they made, or thing they kind of drew on this article, because it's true, like there can be a real intensity to those female friendships. So it was really cool hearing a woman kind of relate to that, I guess. And so that's been really, really interesting.
That's great. And Maddie, how about you? How has the audience been for your films, and do you feel like they got your work?
My work's not super accessible, so
Fair enough.
so to be fair, I think I'm really lucky, even though I said like, yeah, I work in a communist country with a single regime and I have censorship. They don't really tell me I have to like make cuts or edits or anything to my movie if it's not like ridiculously political or anything. It's not like, oh, I need to please a demographic of dudes age 20 to 30, or like for marketing purposes, maybe it should be like English language, and like they don't give a fuck about that. So I get to make whatever the hell kind of film I want to make, as long as I don't like overstep the boundaries of obvious, censorship. So I have to admit that my films are, there's an audience for them. There's definitely an audience for them. And the people who love them, but it's definitely not for the mainstream audience. All my films require a lot of patience and a lot of attention to detail, because I super hate, in Italian it's called the spiegone, and it's called the big explain. And I find with a lot of Occidental Western films, there's a lot of this big explaining, like you have flashbacks so people understand, you have to explain shit. There's this expectation, because I'm making a film from another culture, that I should explain my culture. I'm like, why the fuck should I explain my culture? None of you guys have to explain Santa Claus to us, right? So like, fuck it. If they believe in reincarnation, you just have to accept it. They believe in reincarnation. And so it's been a strange journey. I find that white people have more of a problem with my film than Asian people, because for so long, our stories and our culture have been portrayed on screen by other white people, and then other festivals with white programmers have been selecting what they consider authentically Southeast Asian and what they consider, palatable. But like, why are these people the tastemakers and not people of color who might understand the culture or something similar to it? And I'm not saying that programmers don't understand our culture. Obviously, like, they have like a huge breadth of experience in multicultural art. But at the same time, it's like everyone's been fed this whole like Asian women are subservient, quiet little lotus blossoms who just like to like, they like fucking a lot, but like without screaming. They don't scream when they have babies either. And it's just like, fuck that. Have you ever heard of the term dragon lady? Like,
right.
Like horror people, Asian women, when we have to take care of business, we fucking destroy. And that's a sentiment that's been around for ages. Like, look at Medea. That was from 431 before Christ. That was Euripides wrote that. She fucking destroyed everything, La Bayadere, that ballet. Nikia, this is 450 years old. She destroys everyone for fucking with her. So like, yeah, my stories are, it's lukewarm.
Oh, I love it. Okay, I feel like I've kind of gone a little bit over on the panel, so my apologies. And to think I'm not even like halfway through my questions. Oh well, for another panel, ladies. Juliet, I don't know if you're going to be coming in to do the Q&As.
Yeah, hi.
Hey, Juliet.
Yeah, so we do have a few questions from audience members, and so I think we'll just continue with this sort of this open floor, and whoever feels like they want to answer. We might go a little bit longer, but we don't have to always hear from everybody, just for time reasons. I know some people have to get going. First question. How important is it to the healthy growth of society to have stories that expose our fears and our monstrosities? Does anyone want to take that one? Elsa.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely crucial because we've seen since the beginning of time that people have talked about monsters, like Maddie just said about Medea. And I really feel fairy tales, myths explore the monstrous nature of humans. And what struck me really when I went out to festivals with Graveyard Live, my first feature, oh, I'm like, where am I looking? Oh, right here. Is that the horror community was so awesome. Like everyone at horror festivals was so lovely, so warm. And then when I went to normal festivals, I could feel the competition. I could feel like people looking over my shoulder, you're not good enough, blah, blah, blah. And so I really felt that people who like horror, who watch horror, who are in touch with it, are in touch with their inner demons and are more open to looking at their fears and just the horror of society, and so there's a catharsis that goes on, and so they can be actually kinder, gentler people. So I think it's super primordial, and especially for women, I think, because we've been taught across societies that women are nice and that they shouldn't get angry and la la la, and so the fact that now we get to make our films and we get to kill people on screen our way is extremely important.
Yeah, interesting. Does anybody else want to weigh in? Yeah, Jen Lynch.
I would just say I couldn't agree more. 100%. It's absolutely necessary. 100%. Just hands down. That's why we do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Truth hurts.
All right. Let's see. Next question. Just give me a second here. It's a question for everyone. Amelia mentioned Videodrome and The Fly by Cronenberg. You guys have kind of answered this, but what directors specifically, horror or otherwise, have had the biggest influence on everyone? So maybe just a one word.
Catherine Bigelow.
All right. Kubrick.
Aronofsky and Del Toro.
Hey, good pronunciation, girl. Del Toro. You sound good.
Yo hablo español.
Yeah, oh, I know. Hey, we partied before. I know you do. No, for me it wasn't one, but it was the three amigos who we called Del Toro, Cuarón, and Iñárritu growing up, which led me to discover Robert Rodriguez and his book, Rebel Without a Crew, I think it was called. Yeah.
Hitchcock for thriller and horror. He wrote the language in a lot of what we use today.
I would
Jennifer
say Dario Argento.
Awesome.
I was going to say, okay, so if you look right here over my shoulder, that's my doll. Somebody made a Maya Deren doll for me. So I would say Maya Deren, who is, was a dancer. I was a dancer. I just forgot that Maddie was a dancer too, that she was a dancer turned experimental filmmaker who really embraced the surreal. And I feel like the first time that I saw one of her films as an art school kid, not a film school kid, because I didn't go to film school, I went to art school. I just, it just felt like I had found my godmother. So Maya Deren.
Yeah, actually, my mother is a performance artist so I grew up in Brooklyn, and in the 90s, it was sort of the heyday of performance art, electronic artists. So a lot of, instead of like being able to afford a babysitter, she just brought me with her. So I think we also need to tip our hat to a lot of the really incredible sort of avant-garde artists of the 90s. So yeah, like I grew up around Laurie Anderson and Pamela Z and Diamanda Gallis and a lot of these really amazing incredibly strong, incredibly intense women artists. And so I think going back to them and that sort of movement, Booster Group and all that good stuff. You reminded me with the Maya Deren, but yeah, I think that's a really influential movement as well.
All right. Here's a question from a fellow filmmaker. Question for all. I'm about to direct my first horror feature, super excited, but also wondering what I don't know. What do you wish you knew or could tell yourself as a woman directing horror?
Ooh, that's a lot of stuff.
What's one thing you wish you had known? Yeah.
I would say, in no uncertain terms, common sense. It's common sense, and you are far more capable than you are aware. And you will go home at night and get into the same bed you woke up in, and you will have made something with other people, and you will have yourself. You just have to keep doing it. Just keep going. It's your story, your voice. You know, if only we could calm ourselves. A little bit of irritation is good. That's how we make a fucking pearl. But you know, if you could just know, if I could have known in my heart in certain moments that I was having the experience I was meant to have, and that the way I speak to a friend or a lover is the way I can speak in this film, especially with Surveillance Chained. I think that that was the biggest deal. So I'd say, you know, common sense, and women are fucking smart.
And definitely your work is only as good as your ambition. You know, like you can't stop. And people look at you as the leader. So even if you bullshit your answers, go with your answers. You know what I mean? You gotta always be super positive, and just your attitude and your answers, and go with it. I think the best advice I ever got, which took me, you know, in my intro, is true. I made 16 short films to get to where I am. Some people takes one, some people take 16. But what I wasn't learning, and it took me time, was that you just, in this business, you can't be afraid of failure. It will eat you up. So, you know, you can't be afraid of failure, and you have to finish what you started. So even if it's just short film or feature, you have to make it till the end. You know, it is the only way that you will learn. And again, like that, the quote, I forget who said it, but that quote of your work is only as good as your ambition, it's very true. And you will only elevate from there.
Yeah, Jen.
I would say too, to add to that, there's, oh my gosh, I just completely brain farted what I was going to say. Holy crap.
Well, if I can,
brain going through my brain, please.
If I can piggyback, and then you can jump back in, on what Gigi is saying. I think, you know, the flip side of that is, when I was first starting out, I was doing a lot of sort of commercial branded work, working with brands. And, you know, I was very obsessed, I think probably because I am a woman, with the idea of making my day, of making client happy, of, you know, bringing this certain level of production value, and sort of all of these logistical things were so at the forefront of my brain. And I think where I've evolved is now, yes, be ambitious, but also give yourself space, right? So if you need to take 5 minutes to think something through, take the damn 5 minutes, and don't just rush. If you go 5 minutes over, you go 5 minutes over. And that was a really hard lesson for me to learn. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah. Back to Jen. The air is cleared.
Right? I found it. The whole reason you're there is to capture those things on film. You should take the fucking 5 minutes. And sometimes, because I'm early every day, I like to show up when the trucks show up. I sit on the set, and suddenly, between what I had anticipated doing and what now I see in the darkened set, has transformed everything. And it will affect blocking. It will affect, you know, what I might push the actors to do in a certain situation. Now is what we have. And if you don't have the footage, you don't have the picture. So take the time to make the footage great. And it is a collaborative medium. You know, you are making this with people alongside other artists. And hopefully you've chosen them because you respect them and they challenge you. And you can say, I don't know right now, I'm going to take 5 minutes. Or what would you say? You know, doesn't mean you have to take the answer. It means it's not a fucking bad thing not to know. It's a bad thing not to admit you don't know. That's dangerous.
Yeah. You got to be honest.
Yeah. And so
Yeah.
be in your voice and it's all about the footage.
And it's okay to not always have the answer, for sure. I think that's like definitely something you get onto set and you feel that pressure, but that's why you have your team with you and everyone's making the movie together. So to just turn to someone and go, well, what do you think? Because I don't actually know. And they might have an amazing answer, and it's okay to not always know. You know, you just have to keep leading and pushing and stay confident, like, you know, but it's okay to not know the answer to every single question.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be the downer, actually, you guys. Everybody's so positive. I love it. I'm going to be a little less positive. This is something my husband told me when I first got into film, and it's still true now. You're a woman. You have to work twice as hard. You have to, you have something to prove. And I know, like, people may not agree with me, but it's true. Like, every time you walk onto the set, there's going to be a bunch of dudes, financiers, when you're pitching your film, producers, they're all looking at you like you're primed to fail. And as a female director, you have to work twice as hard to make the film, and the confidence that you have to exude. You don't have to be a dick about it, of course not, but you have to be confident in knowing what you want. And when you don't know what you want, you have to be able to help your collaborators to understand that it is a team effort. It's not that you don't have the confidence. You need the whole team to work together to enhance your vision. So this is the best thing about directing. It's your vision with a bunch of other respected professionals who are bringing their art to enhance your vision. And that's something that you really have to think about. And I think finally, you're looking at that monitor, you guys. Like, whenever you watch a movie, a good movie or even a shitty movie, sometimes we see shitty movies and we're like, oh, that was so bad. That was like, look at the acting was so horrible. Your one job as a director is to just get the performance. Every film you saw, that was the best performance on the screen. I don't know how many takes it took them, but obviously they wouldn't put that on the screen if they didn't feel that was the best. So your one job as director is to make sure you have that performance before you put it on the fucking screen. I mean, sorry. I mean, that's just the reality.
Hey, look, I'm not gonna lie to that. You know, my TV episode debut, I went on that set for the 9th episode. People look at me like, and who's this? Who's this little girl? Like, no, for real. And you will feel that. But I think this, you know, for this question specifically, if it's your first feature, girl, well, I don't know if you're a girl who's ever asking, but this being your first feature, holy shit, you're the director for a reason. You know, it's not a for hire. It sounds like you're literally picked to direct this thing for a reason. So continue to show that reason. I think to what Matty said, it is the truth. You got to work twice as hard. Is it a bad thing? I don't look at it as a bad thing. I think it's motivating me to be more chingona than I already am. You know, if I got to work twice as hard, fuck it. I'll show you what's up. Like, you just cannot look at it as a bad thing. I think a lot of people, and being in the horror a lot, like I try to be part of women in horror, and I try to be part of women in this, women in that. And it's just really important. You can't look at being a chick as a disadvantage. You just can't. You can't bitch about it. Cause shit, that's why we don't get the job, man. I don't mean to rant now, but to more what Matty said, you go on there and you prove it. Don't whine about it. And it has happened. I have witnessed it as an actress. The director really trickling down, and man, it'll come down hard. You got to go on there so strong. And it's the truth. And we just got to keep changing the game to be so strong. But yeah, I don't mean to rant, but you just can't, you can't let it get to you being a chick. And if you got to work twice as hard, I don't see that as a bad thing. I've been doing that for years. So I don't know.
I was going to say, we work twice as hard at everything.
Yeah. Since the
So,
For real.
yeah, forever.
And we do it in
Bad thing.
heels.
yeah.
Girl.
So for me too, it's and fucking shame on everyone who decides we need to behave a certain way to do this job. Fucking shame on them. So don't give them the time of day. Make sure that you're not fighting this bullshit that we're hysterical, that we can't possibly handle the pressure. We can do anything you can do bleeding, gentlemen. No problemo. Okay.
Ooh,
So, but
I
again,
love that.
don't go in there thinking about that. Go in there thinking about the collective group you have, getting them all excited about manifesting this moment. Make sure you know what the moment is. And remember, it's a visual medium. If you don't have to say it, if during blocking, it doesn't have to be said, rip it out of the script and show it in at least one take. And do that for yourself. Say, I'm going to get 2 of these, and then I'd like to do an alt, please. And they will never say no, not even in television, as long as you've gotten what they've written down. So own your space. You don't have to pretend you have a dick to get the job done. In fact, it's better not to. You don't hold the camera with your vagina, so it's not about like, she's doing something different. It's weird, you know?
That would be awkward.
Yeah, you know, it depends.
Yeah,
But you know,
it's true.
Anyway, you know, shame on anybody who's still in this day and age trying to belittle any gender or person. I think it's absolutely disgusting and says how small the person saying it is, not how small the other one is.
I don't even think they're intentionally doing it. I think it's just been so seated inside of them, which is even worse to me. Do you know what I mean? It's just like when people talk about systemic racism and they don't believe it exists, like, I'm sorry, look around you, but it's so seated inside of them that they can't identify it themselves. I think that that's really insidious.
I couldn't agree. And I just think that in a manner of speaking, so that, because you're not just being devil's advocate, you're saying what is legitimately true. You know what I mean? Having said that, there is a way to combat it, and it's by doing your job, and just don't feed into it.
All right. So some really good advice. Okay, for I think the final question, there have been a few requests for how can people see your films. And so maybe we can just kind of go one by one. Elsa, is Slacks available to see right now beyond festivals? Where can people see it?
It's going to be playing in theaters across Quebec and Canada starting September 11th.
Okay.
So please come if you're in Montreal. It's playing in 2 theaters here and then across Quebec. It's going to be playing on Shudder in the US and a lot of the English language territories starting from what I believe in March. And then for the other territories, I'm not sure. Maybe Patricia knows the answer. For my other films, you can watch them on iTunes and yeah, go on my website and you'll see links to them.
All right, thank you. Is that all in Canada, Elsa?
For the other films?
For Slacks.
For Slacks, I know that it's going to play in Toronto and Vancouver.
Toronto, Vancouver. Okay.
And then eventually it'll be online, but I'm not sure when or where.
All right. Amelia, is it possible to see Bleed With Me beyond?
Yeah, so it's
festivals?
playing again on September 1st at 3 p.m. Montreal time.
Yeah.
And so if you are around, you can catch it again at Fantasia. And then eventually it'll have an online digital release, but nothing is official as of yet. So if you want to see it soon, September 1st.
All right, thank you. Gigi, where can people see Culture Shock?
You can watch it on Hulu. It's too bad nobody here in Vancouver can see it. I'm like, yo, I promise I made something. I promise. Do not download the movie. But yeah, you can watch it on Hulu. And then you can watch El Gigante on Shudder. And then I'll have a new thing for Day of the Dead. That's as much as I can say. Something new will be released soon.
All right.
Yeah.
Perfect. Maddie, The Long Walk.
The Long Walk?
Your sister, Chantilly.
Chantilly is like fucking free on YouTube, you guys. Like, you can get it on Vimeo and YouTube. I made that shit for like $4,500 and a DSLR camera. Like, yeah, you can just like type Chantilly. You can see my my best boy, like my favorite dog ever, starring in it. He's like one of the main characters. It was my old house too. Dear Sisters on Shudder.com, which is also on, and it's also on Amazon and I believe iTunes, but it's all through Shudder. The Long Walk, you're probably never gonna see it. I don't know, hopefully. Like I said, it's not the most accessible film. It is very art house.
Jennifer Reeder, Knives and Skin.
So Knives and Skin is also on Hulu right now. And then like, I feel like I've got Gigi beat in how many short films I've made. I've made like 40 short films. But, cause I mean, short films are people too, you know?
Hell yeah, they're awesome.
And so on my Vimeo page, there's every single short film that I've made free and accessible. So I'm out there.
Great.
You can find me.
Great. Natasha, where can we see Lucky?
So we're supposed to have a few more festivals. We were actually with the canceled South by Southwest this year. They canceled it like the day before the United States basically shut down. So we've still got a few to go. That was actually supposed to be the beginning of our circuit. So there's a few more in the fall. They'll probably be virtual. And then we will also be releasing with Shudder early next year. And then my first film, Imitation Girl, is out. Probably Prime, Amazon Prime is the easiest way to watch it.
All right. And Jennifer Lynch, what are you working on these days and where should we be watching it?
What I'm working on these days you can't see yet, but
right.
And as far as Surveillance or Chained, those come and go from Amazon. But you know, Boxing Lane and all that are very art house. Rather than Ever Seeing Hiss, please see Despite the Gods, was the documentary of behind the scenes of making it, because I didn't get to make my film, but you can see me try like a motherfucker. So yeah, and failing is part of doing it. So
can't be afraid of it.
Exactly. Yeah. If a child stopped trying to walk every time it fell down, none of us would be moving around anywhere.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much to all of you. I have to say that I also spent the entire week watching your films and felt so inspired. I make documentaries and am pretty new to genre. And so this was like a little course for me. And I'm so excited, and like I've got new aspirations now. So
yay!
Thank you all. Yay!
This was beautiful company. This was really nice company with all you guys. You guys are super talented.
It was beautiful.
Yeah, it was
Thank
a real
you guys
pleasure.
to the audience for coming too.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hello, audience.
Hey.
I can't wait to see what everyone's making. This is like, I feel like we're getting little teases. People are coming out with new stuff. I can't wait. It's really exciting.
Yeah, there's lots of shout outs coming from people. I don't know if you can see them, but people are loving what you guys have to say, and I've had goosebumps throughout. And so thank you all. Thank you, Patricia, for moderating.
Really, the pleasure was all mine. This is like a great way to spend my Sunday. So much better than laundry, okay? Really, it was such a pleasure to get to know you girls. I mean, after watching all your films, I didn't really know a lot of you, so it's great to kind of see your faces. And you guys gave me some pretty intense like dreams all week. It was just like seeping into my subconscious. I love it. I recommend it to everyone out there. Just watch like these films back to back. Great stuff.
Yeah, and thank you to Fantasia, Mitch Davis, Jean-Francois for your tech help, and Maud Michaud, who was so important to helping curate this whole panel. Thank you to Maud as well.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks,
you.
Maud. Thanks, everyone.
All right.
Hi, Tammy.
Bye.
Stay safe, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
So